The worst kept secret right now is that Kirk Cousins is negotiating with everyone at the Combine, even though that's against the rules. So what gives? Let's hash it out. The Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that? 3, 1, 2, 3. You like it?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much to those of you who listen to this show every single day. You make this thing go. Thank you so much for tuning in and making Locked On Vikings your first listen. If you are new here, you can, of course, find this show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is SiriusXM or anywhere else where you listen to podcasts. You can also find this show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and even Roku if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Today on the show, we got to do a little bit of catching up from the weekend. The quarterbacks went at the Combine. We also probably should talk about who the bridge QB will be and why that's important. But first things first, maybe the biggest thing coming out of the Combine, the biggest thing in the whole rumor mill is that Kirk Cousins is talking to everybody. And not physically Kirk Cousins, he's not there. He's, I don't know, swimming in the ocean or something. No, it's his agent, of course, speaking on his behalf. But this is against the rules. It's called tampering, and it's a big deal if the league decides they want it to be. There is one tampering case that I can remember that actually mattered, and that was the Dolphins a year ago with Tom Brady. And they lost a first-round pick over it. But I don't think it was just about the fact that they negotiated with Tom Brady before the window opened. And maybe people were upset about that because I would bet dollars to donuts that Miami wasn't the only team and that everybody involved knew about that. Miami is going through something different with the Brian Flores lawsuit and trying to pay coaches $100,000 per loss and all that stuff. And it kind of felt like tampering was the only letter of the law charge that they could levy at the Dolphins, and they went hard. That's just my tinfoil hat. My tinfoil hat fell apart. If you missed the tinfoil hat that I used to bring out, if you watch the show on YouTube, and I used to sometimes wear a tinfoil hat for these, it is dead. Sorry, the Scotch tape wore out. But suffice to say, you're not supposed to discuss contract things right now. You're supposed to wait till you're an actual free agent. Cousins is still technically under contract with the Vikings, and the Vikings should have exclusive negotiating rights right now. Kevin O'Connell, this is not, don't take my word for it, by the way. I'm not a reporter. I'm not talking about sources. A million people have said this. Ben Gessling and Andrew Kramer at least hinted at it. Darren Wolfson said a whole bunch of it. Reporters from other markets have been saying it. And Kevin O'Connell went on NFL Network on the Combine broadcast and was like, yeah, they're probably not supposed to be doing it, but we've given him the right to, we think he's earned the right to be a free agent. That was the wording. Which, I mean, he's saying that without saying it. He's talking to other teams. Now, does that mean he's gonzo? Of course not. He is feeling it out. So here's where I think the situation stands right now. I think that the Vikings have been very clear with Kirk Cousins about what they're going to give him or what they aren't going to give him. And I think that there's a line in the sand, as Ben Gessling put it on Access Vikings. There's a line in the sand. This is what we will give you. If you can beat it, go. If somebody else can beat it, then go and God bless. Problem is, if he becomes a free agent, a whole bunch of dead cap accelerates, and the deal that the Vikings gave him or have offered him now is probably off the table because that changes the cap considerations a lot. And if you are going to sign him to another contract, you have to structure it differently and probably negotiate it way differently. Totally different situation. So for Kirk Cousins, if we're going to do this by the letter of the law, he has to choose between the total unknown of free agency, because he's not allowed to talk to anybody, or the deal that the Vikings have put out there. And what if there's a better deal out there for him? This is where I kind of feel on tampering. I think it should just be acceptable and fine. I don't really see like a moral issue with that. In fact, I think it's kind of bad business for players for sure. In that if I'm a player and I have an offer from my team that's trying to extend me and they can give me $5 million and there's another team that would give me $8 million, but they're not allowed to tell me that, and I got to take the $5 million thing, I don't think I'd be a big fan of that rule, right? And yeah, it's a big advantage for teams, and it's something that Rick Spielman in particular took huge advantage of by extending players to deals that would turn out to be team friendly, sometimes so much so that it would piss the player off eventually. Check out Daniil Hunter. When he had exclusive negotiating rights, he would take advantage of that and say, you got to sign this or you got to go out into the market and good luck because you don't have any idea if anyone's going to want you. And sometimes players go out into the market, nobody wants them, and they end up, signing a veteran minimum deal in June with somebody saying, oh my God, like I really thought, I could have had this. And maybe they lose out on millions of dollars if they didn't take the deal that came from their team at the time. That's a tough decision to have to make. So I think players being able to be more informed about those decisions when millions of dollars are on the line. And by the way, this doesn't actually cost teams any more or less, or the NFL any more or less, because that money's all in the salary cap. It's going to someone, right? And it's just a matter of how it allocates itself. But I think for it to be the true meritocracy that the NFL kind of fancies itself as, I think tampering should just be illegal. My proposal is that once you have played your last game for the team, like if they didn't make the playoffs or if you get eliminated and you're in a contract year and it's 2 months until you're going to become a true free agent, I kind of think it should just be fine to talk to anyone. Can't put pen to paper, right? It basically just expand the legal tampering window from the 2 days that it is right now to the end of that team's season. That is somebody actually asked, like, wait, what is tampering? So I guess I shouldn't assume that it is like a common knowledge everybody has. So if you are confused or if you don't know what I actually mean by tampering is the word that the league uses for talking to a player before you're supposed to. Let's say, for example, that a team started negotiating a contract with Justin Jefferson right now. You'd be kind of pissed about that, right? Like, hey, he's our dude. What are you doing negotiating a contract? And what if, let's say, the Jaguars came in and say, hey, we're going to give you $40 million, but you got to demand out. And then Justin Jefferson says, well, are you going to give me $40 million? Because they are. And suddenly he's just a free agent. And the fact that he's under contract means nothing, right? So you have to do something about that. But that's why I kind of say, look, after they've played their last game with you, they kind of aren't under contract anymore. But you still will get exclusive signing rights, right? So the Jaguars can say, yeah, we'll give you $40 million, Justin Jefferson, but you can only sign a deal that you sign with me. Otherwise, you got to wait and we can still have all of our levers of team control and stuff on something like that. So I think it works out, right? I do think it would be fine if teams do this at the Combine. The Combine is a great place to negotiate free agency without having to commit to anything. And that's really what is going on here with Kirk Cousins. He's not committing to anything. He's not committing away from anything. When his agent takes a call from the Atlanta Falcons, he's just learning what that contract is. And so here's what the dynamic is, the way it sounds right now. The Vikings have given them the offer, and can someone beat it? And if someone can beat it, then Cousins walks, go and God bless. But if nobody can beat it, then he says, okay, cool, I got my information. Now I can confidently sign my deal with you, knowing that you're the team that values me the most, and let us press onward with this. And that's where this thing is going to be. I don't think anybody has a leg to be mad about it. I think it's just the way things work. And I don't think O'Connell is mad about it. I think that they've been very clear. Go have your conversations, see what you hear, and if you come back to our deal, you come back to our deal. Like, I don't think that there's any animosity with that or with any of the other teams or whatever. I think O'Connell was just trying to say it without getting in trouble when he talked about it on NFL Network. I digress. But how about instead of he said, she said, let's talk about the quarterbacks and how they actually did. And in particular, JJ McCarthy, who was like the marquee guy who actually threw at the Combine. So let's take a look at that next. Thank you so much to FanDuel, sponsor of today's episode. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and they're America's #1 sportsbook for a reason. Big reason is all of the cool special props and special deals that they have going on all the time. So if you are a regular FanDuel gambler, check out the FanDuel website all the time because there's new stuff like all the time. But if you are new, you can go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and get this. Any winning $5 bet gets you $150 in bonus bets. That's $150 in bonus bets with any $5 bet that wins. But that $5 bet can be any odds. You can pick like super, super short odds, some heavy favorites money line or something like that. And you can get $150 back just for laying $5 down on that very, very sure thing. Assuming it still wins, you get 30-1 odds on that thing. That's pretty crazy. And you're not going to find odds like that anywhere else. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, make every moment more. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day, each and every day. Next up, let's talk about these quarterbacks and the combine that they had, in particular, J.J. McCarthy. So here's some of the other, I guess, buzz coming out of the combine. And again, don't take my word for this, all right? You search it up, you're going to find a bunch of reporters saying all this same stuff. I'm just kind of piecing it all together. You can even say I'm aggregating for you. But I'm trying to sift through what is, noise from people that aren't interested in informing you and actually like trying to look out for you. But what it seems like is that the Vikings like J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy also had his interview with the Vikings, and he raved about how fun it was to talk to the Vikings. And in fact, Jaden Daniels said the same thing. I think Drake May also said the same thing. So apparently the Vikings are a very fun conversation to have, for whatever that's worth to you. Get a great report card. Put it on the report card, hang the banner. But it's the flip side that is maybe a little more interesting. If it's true that what everybody's hearing about it is that the Vikings are super high on J.J. McCarthy, and it's also true that they're trying to trade up to the 3rd overall pick. Whoa, I see you making some leaps there. Chill out, brain. No. That's not what those two things aren't necessarily part of the same conversation. They could be, but the Vikings trying to move up to 3 is an idea I think Darren Wolfson first put out there way back in the Senior Bowl. And said that Kwesi talked to New England and, planted the seed, I think is the way he put it, or he kind of planted an idea and now they're still talking about it. So I have no idea how New England feels about that, if they're just trying to hang up on Kwesi and Kwesi just continuing to press and continuing to put it out there in the media to, warm people up to the idea and make it seem less outlandish. But that's where we're at. The Vikings want to go to the 3rd overall pick. Now, here's the deal. For me, there are 4 quarterbacks worth sniffing at that point, right? Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and then J.J. McCarthy, who the other thing everybody says is that the league is higher on him than you think. Yeah, we get a little bit of Michigan fatigue sometimes. And I especially think people who watch college football day in and day out, Michigan was always on TV. They were always blowing snaps and busting protections and dropping footballs, and they were very frustrating to watch. And it kind of felt like every win was super fraudulent, and you just sort of graft that onto the QB and go, he must be a fraudulent QB. That's probably bad scouting process. But it's like a subconscious thing that happens. It's just a thing to check on. Maybe you're not doing that at all. Maybe you're like me and you didn't even watch Michigan. And you just, flipped on their tape afterwards and tried to, suss out what was going on, which I think is a healthier way to do it, because you go in with no preconceived notions and you're not just trying to look at how the Michigan Wolverines won games. You're looking at J.J. McCarthy and what he does and how his feet work and how his arm works and the throws he hits and stuff. He had a reasonably good weekend, J.J. McCarthy did. One of the big things, he weighed in at 219, which he was supposed to be a lot lighter than that, which was, I guess, a concern for some people. It wasn't really a concern for me. I don't care about that. I care about injury history when it comes to injury risks. But when it comes to how light you look, tough people come in all shapes and sizes. So that I wasn't particularly concerned with. But I guess if you were concerned with it, that concern is assuaged because he weighed in at a good weight. And he's probably not going to play at 219. My guess is that people told him, you are going to be, your draft stock might fall if you weigh in too light. You got to gain a bunch of weight and gain a bunch of muscle. But you're not preparing for a game. You're preparing for a weigh-in, and that's a different fitness regimen, and that's going to be different than what he's doing when he's actually functionally on the field for you. So I wouldn't put too much stock into it one way or the other, and I also just kind of don't care. But it might have mattered because I am not an NFL decision maker, so what I think doesn't matter at all. So that was good. He ran a sick 3-cone, by the way, if you were worried that he just gained a bunch of bad weight. It was like he was up there with the corners. It was crazy. Awesome. Love it. Sure, dude. But then he threw, and the throwing we'll go with was mixed. He missed a lot of the same balls that you saw him miss. Now, if you watched my Patreon video at patreon.com/NFL, nothing about that combine should have surprised you with JJ McCarthy. It basically just confirmed everything you could already kind of see about him. He missed a lot of those layery deep balls. He hit the balls that were a little more anticipatory and took a little bit more zip. He threw the ball very hard, like on the radar. And I think that might have surprised some people because people see JJ McCarthy as like a noodle arm guy. And for me, at least, that's an inadequate explanation to the throws that he's good at and the throws that he's not good at. Arm strength is not really about your deep throw. It's about your zippy, tight window throw. That's when you really have to be physically strong. And there's no way to, you can optimize your throwing motion all you want, but at a certain point, you just have to be able to put some mustard on that thing. But for those deep balls, those 40-yard little go ball kind of fade balls that McCarthy threw a lot of, but did not hit a lot of, that's more of a touchy, layery technique thing. And I've pointed out some things I think are wrong with his technique that caused that problem. He also failed a lot throwing to the left, which I also could be a side effect of the same issue, the same root issue, which is in the way that his stance is, it's closed. He essentially doesn't step off to the left enough. And when you close your body like that, the further left you're throwing, the more across your body you're throwing and the less accurate you're going to be. And those same issues appear when you're trying to get up nice and tall and put like layery, put air under it and try to like fade something in there. Those same issues are also going to be exacerbated when you're doing that more exaggerated kind of lopey motion. But if you are trying to throw to the right, you're already kind of closing your body off, and that's like part of it. So that issue can be mitigated a little bit. I don't know, it makes sense to me. So everything about JJ McCarthy's combine made sense. And I don't think he's perfect. I've still got him QB4, nobody freak out, but I like him. And I like him in spite of those issues. We did confirm that those issues are there, and they did not get fixed in his training for the combine. It's something that his QB coach, whoever he is going to have to decide whether or not he wants to fix. If that's the Vikings, that's Josh McCown. Elsewhere in the QB world, Joe Milton, the Tennessee guy, threw some long balls, but I think everybody kind of understands that like he's maybe just going to do great in shorts, but that's not really, doesn't really address the concern with him in the combine. He's somebody that maybe I'll get to way later, so don't expect me to like do a deep dive on him anytime soon. Bo Nix and Mike Penix also exist. They threw, I don't know, they're like the second round guys to people, so I feel like they're not quite as big a news. But that's where we end up at the combine with those guys. So McCarthy, I don't know, if he assuaged your concerns, if he showed he actually had some arm strength and that is a technique thing, like that can be something that the combine is for, where you watch the tape and you go, okay, he's missing. Why? I have my hypothesis. Maybe you have a different one. That's fine. Why is he missing? Is it because he's just physically incapable of throwing a good ball? Or is it because there's a technique issue and if you fix it, it gets fixed, right? That's the big mystery that everybody wants to know. Is this fixable? I get that question like every single time. Every single Twitter Tuesday, which by the way, get your questions in. So to the question, is this fixable? Well, if he can throw a fast ball on a radar, maybe it is. But should you fix it? Fixable does not mean will get fixed. It means possible, not happening, right? We gotta chill on our probabilistic thinking, right? So I don't know, confirms my theories, but I still have my reservations, but those reservations are not enough to knock me off of the idea of drafting him in the first round. Now I'm trading up to 3 to draft him. That's a little rich for me, but if he's your guy and you just are that high on him, I can at least respect and understand that. I'll disagree with it, but who cares? I'm a podcaster. So let's move on from this and let's talk about bridge quarterbacks and why the Vikings do still need a bridge quarterback, assuming Kirk Cousins walks, or maybe Kirk Cousins is that guy. And if it's not, who else could it be? Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by BetterHelp. It is online therapy made easy. Therapy has been very important for me. I have been in therapy for years now. For most of the time that I've been like a freelance worker that doesn't like get up and go to an office every day. And that has been so key to helping me like regulate my mental health in a world where like regulating anything is really hard when you like make your own hours, and other freelancers, you can probably relate. Having some sort of just like regulatory conversation has been good to like keep me on a track. I don't know. It helps me a lot. But whatever it is for you, whether it's that or dealing with some kind of family issue or something, or other more lighthearted stuff like dealing with the anxiety that your favorite sports team brings you, therapy can be very helpful. And BetterHelp can help get you hooked up with a therapist that is right for you. You can go to betterhelp.com/lockedon and you can get 10% off of your first month. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/lockedon and get on your way to being your best self. Moving right along with this Locked On Vikings episode, let's talk about bridge quarterbacks for a second. There are a few names out there that are intriguing, but first, I think the idea of a bridge quarterback is something we have to sort of get used to again. We lived in a world for 6 years here now with Kirk Cousins, and a seventh isn't out of the question, but let's assume for a moment that it is. That's 6 years of a world where it was truly, we were told this is a Super Bowl guy, and this is a Super Bowl team. And sometimes that team would go 7-10, and sometimes that team would go 13-4, or, sometimes that team would win a playoff game, sometimes they'd be last in the division. But the running theme we were told from whether it was Zimmer or O'Connell or the Wilfs or Spielman or whoever was this team competes, this team has a chance to win a championship. And to a lot of people, that was laughable. I get it. A bridge quarterback is different than that, because that was essentially the laughable part of that is I just do not agree with you about Kirk Cousins, and so much so that I think that you're being an idiot, right? Like that's the take. But with a bridge quarterback, you're not saying that if I bring in Jacoby Brissett, he's the guy I did for my blow it all up exercise I did last week. And I like the idea of Jacoby Brissett as a bridge quarterback, but you're not saying Jacoby Brissett is a Super Bowl quarterback. He does not win you the championship. What he does is keep the ship afloat for 6 weeks while your rookie gets ready, and then your rookie wins you the championship. That's the logic here. His job is not to be somebody that can, be a top 5 QB in the league. That's what we were told about Kirk Cousins. He's going to be this, he's going to make the next leap. This is the year, right? Whether it's because we finally have an O-line, or now we finally have, the running game that's supposed to complement, or we have a better OC this time. That was the thing every single, or now maybe it's because we have the same OC, right? The same play caller. All of these, we were told a reason every single year that he's going to be a top 5 quarterback, and the Vikings will be a contender, right? To various degrees of missing that mark every single time. A bridge quarterback is there not to contend, but to keep the thing afloat. And I do not believe that we know how advantageous the rookie contract for a quarterback is, right? If you don't, here's the deal. Rookies make cost-controlled amounts of money that have not kept up with the inflation of the salary cap. Rookies are cheap. If you draft a player, he will be cheap for 4 years, and there's not really a lot that anyone can do about it. For a quarterback, they're making $50 million a year now. Even if they're not like all that great, they're making $50 million a year. That's a huge advantage, right? I don't really want to piss away that advantage for a year just because I don't feel like I'm like ready to go for the Super Bowl, So here's the scenario. I look at the Texans, for example. I think that this worked out very well for the Texans. Now, they didn't have a bridge quarterback, but you can sort of see the same effect in CJ Stroud because he was ready enough to keep the team afloat. They sort of hovered around 500 for the first part of the season, and CJ Stroud was struggling. He was having the rookie lumps that a lot of quarterbacks will have that you just kind of have to live through, right? And they were 500 up to that point. Then CJ Stroud hit another gear. They went on a winning streak. They win the division. They win a playoff game. great season for the Texans. They can feel very good going forward, right? No matter how the season ended, they can feel very good moving forward. But with having that sort of those extra couple of wins in their back pocket allowed them to make this a season where they weren't the favorite to win the Super Bowl, but they were in the dance at the end, right? They were in the final 8 going into Baltimore with every chance in the world to win that game. And I mean, you went into that Baltimore game. Yeah, Baltimore was favored by, I think, a touchdown, but shoot, touchdown favorite in the playoffs. Who has ever lost a game that they were touchdown favorites in the playoffs for, right? I mean, come on. That's absolutely possible. Not probable, but not impossible. And I think that's the most you can ask is not impossible, right? It's impossible for the Vikings to win the Super Bowl when they're not in the playoffs, but it's not impossible for the Texans to win the Super Bowl, even with a rookie quarterback and how difficult that is. It was a chance. And now they've used the first year of that rookie deal. They had a chance. I think you want to get that same effect, but you can't guarantee that you're going to get the same performance out of your rookie that the Texans got out of CJ Stroud, especially in the first part of the year. If you're 1-7 when your quarterback kicks it into high gear, that season is kaput. But what if you had a quarterback that could make you 3-4 or 4-4 by that moment? Then your quarterback kicks it into high gear and you're in the dance and you can maybe make a push and get weird, right? That's what we're here for with a bridge quarterback. So who could be a bridge quarterback? The ideas that have been floated, like Jacoby Brissett is one that I've floated just as a name that I like, but there's no steam or anything. A lot of people have made the connection between Josh McCown and Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold seemed like he learned a lot in San Francisco. I actually like that idea. He's a pending free agent, as somebody to just play 6, 7, 8 games while a rookie gets ready. And maybe you don't even need him. That'd be great. You get your first round pick in. He starts right away. He's your week 1 guy. And now your bridge quarterback's a good backup quarterback. Well, that's still a good thing to have. But if you had him and you didn't end up needing him, you might feel like that's maybe an inefficient use of resources, but like so is car insurance. Get over it. You don't get to know ahead of time if you're going to need the guy. That's the thing. You have to get a bridge quarterback before you even know who your quarterback is, let alone whether or not they'll be ready day 1. So you have to make this decision now, not knowing, and you have to cover your bases. I think Tyrod Taylor is like absolutely made in a lab to be a bridge quarterback. He is a fairly conservative player that is, a safe with the football, picture perfect backup QB. That's why he's in his mid 30s and still going strong in the league. And I think he'd be a great option. There are some other options I don't love as much, like Jameis Winston. Look, if we wanted a quarterback to throw 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions and play chaos ball, we have Nick Mullins at home, and he's already under contract. Why would we add another one? Let's let Jameis Winston go compete to start somewhere, which is what he wants. He actually wants like a chance to compete for a start. He feels as though he has earned that. And I don't think he's been very shy about that, to be honest. But that's somebody else's deal, if you ask me. I don't think that he's like a bridge QB that where you're telling him, hey, when the rookie's ready, you're out. This is over. As soon as you have a singular lapse, we're putting in the rookie when it feels like, we're 4-5 and we need a spark. So I like that. I like other ideas more than that idea. Gardner Minshew, I've always been partial to Gardner Minshew. I wouldn't hate it, but I think he's a little bit restrictive in terms of what he is capable of. I think Ryan Tannehill falls in the same bucket for me in that I don't know if you can run the offense you want to run with him. And I think that's an important thing for a bridge QB is like, do I have to run Mickey Mouse nonsense for this guy? If so, not quite as interested. But somebody like Jacoby Brissett can at least attempt all the throws, right? You don't start taking plays out of your book because Jacoby Brissett can't throw them. At least that's not my interpretation of Jacoby Brissett. A really funny name. I was just talking to Kevin Ostreicher on Locked On NFL. He said like, "Oh, Tyler Huntley." I don't know about that one, but hey, maybe he's earned a chance to prove his mettle as a day 1 starter, and then eventually kind of have his kind of half season of that, and then the rookie comes in. Maybe that's something. I don't know. So I don't know. These are not names that get anybody excited. These are not names that are your franchise guy moving forward that give you a chance to compete for the Super Bowl year in and year out, to keep the thing afloat. And I think that it's important that we get back to a world where we can look at the word serviceable and understand that serviceable has utility and is a good thing and has value, rather than just being a backhanded way of saying not good enough. I think we kind of fell into that trap in the last 6 years, and that's the Kirk curse, I guess, is that you get so disillusioned with the idea of being medium that you'd rather be bad. And I've had a lot of arguments with people over that. It's time to reset our brains a little bit and understand that a guy that's just okay, and because you're paying for just okay, can be a really vital piece and a vital ingredient to a successful transition into the next guy. Or maybe we don't do that at all and Kirk Cousins returns on a 2-year deal or something like that. Still in the cards. Ask me questions. You can send them to me. Just look at the description. You can find a Google form that you can fill out. You can also send me an email at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. You can shoot them to me at Twitter. I always put out a call on Monday, so keep an eye out for that at Luke Brown NFL. I will see you guys all tomorrow. And as always, Skull.